So today's topic is going to be all about um, how to teach people about supported decision making and how to tell them why they should choose supported decision making. Again, we just want to emphasize that this training is to help you to become a co-presenter, a co-trainer with DVU on the topic of supported decision making. So today we're going to focus on the items in the curriculum that we have built out on supported decision making and how to begin to integrate your lived experiences throughout the curriculum. So, not just present on the topics and learn about the content in it, but to integrate your lived experience as a self advocate in it as well. And today we also have Keisha Weller to introduce themselves. So, again, if you all haven't met me yet, I'm Vivian. I'm the project manager for our supported decision making training and information center here at DVU, working on all of our supported decision making projects and trainings. And I'll go ahead and pass it off to Keisha, who will be co training with us today to introduce herself.
Thank you so much, Vivian. Um, Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Keisha Weller, and I have been advocating for the last about 35 years. I have worked with DBU for a long time, and I'm also an expert on support decision making and conservatorship because of my lived experiences. And it's a pleasure to be with everyone today. Thank you.
Again, we just wanted to remind everyone about our Zoom controls. Everyone should have the ability to mute and unmute or turn their camera on and off, as well as participate in the chat. Feel free to leave any comments, questions that you may have in the chat, and we'll be sure to address them in our question and answer at the end. And then there's also the React function there. So if you want to raise your hand to be able to ask a question, that'll help facilitate us as well as like using other reactions as well. If you need closed captioning, that is also provided. Just click the show captions button right there. And then last week we started off with this quote and we just wanted to bring it up for everyone again today. Supported decision making is a human right. Everyone should have the right to make choices with support and without the courts. And we just want to let that kind of marinate with everyone here. Supported decision making, it's a human right. It's been recognized by the UN, and everyone has the right to make those decisions with whatever support that they may need. So again, to kind of go over our what we're going to go over today, it's going to be all of the sections of our general supported decision making training. If you were able to watch the full training beforehand as a part of the homework, you'll know that this training is targeted towards family members and self advocates, but we will have the chance to be able to train other audiences as well. So we'll make sure to talk about it in the end, how you can cater your story to different audiences, and how we can cater our curriculum to different audiences as well. And so the content of today's session will all be about your role as a self advocate and as a co trainer for these series. The risks of conservatorship, we'll talk a little bit about what a conservatorship is, and the risks of them, as well as an introduction to supported decision making. Once again, the next section is decision making, and then finally, supported decision making in action and knowing your audience and how we can adapt our presentation to different audiences. And so, with that, we'll get started with your role. So, what is your role here? Everyone here has either been through a DVU program, whether it's emerging leaders, ambassadors, or our self advocate speakers training. And we just want to emphasize that the power of your story and the power of yourself as a self advocate, being able to share your perspective as a self advocate and adding to your lived experience and sharing on how you use supported decision making, why others should use supported decision making, and the impact it has in your life. And I'll pass it off to Keisha to share a little bit more about why your role here is so important.
Thank you so much. By sharing your support decision making story, you can emphasize the importance of individual anatomy and and the capability of people to make their own decisions with support. I will be sharing my own support decision making story later in this training. It's important to share your SDM story because it's educating others about how effective STM is in your own life. By sharing your real life experiences with STM, you are helping other sub advocates to understand how sub advocates can make their own informed decisions with support. Thank you.
Thank you, Keisha. And again, we just want to talk about the impact your story has and how you can connect with the audience and provide real life examples. And so, again, everyone, regardless of their disability or what supports they may need, has the right to make decisions. And that we want to really think about as like our overall messaging and our theme as we go into these next sections. So, the first section of every one of our supported decision making trainings is on the risk of conservatorship. Supported decision making was brought into law with AB 1663, a law in 2000, and it was signed into law in 2022, and it showed another alternative to conservatorship. Um, and Michaela has also provided a summary of all of our slides in the chat as well. So if that is something that is helpful for you to follow along with our presentation today, feel free to click on that as well. So, what are the main talking points when we're talking about risks of conservatorships and conservatorships in general? The first main part is what is a conservatorship? So, we talk about how conservatorship is through a court process where there's a hearing involved, where the conservator is set and there becomes a court appointed conservator. In a conservatorship, we talk about the difference between conservatorship and supported decision making is in a conservatorship, there is one person and they have sole decision making power over the conservatee, the person with the disability. Whereas with supported decision making, you are surrounded with a circle of support helping you make the decisions, but you are in the driver's seat. So again, unlike supported decision making, conservatorship is a court process that you have to go through. We also talk a lot about the risks of conservatorship. The big one being over half of the conservatorships in the US right now, the conservator is a stranger. It's someone that you don't know. There's not necessarily a great plan of succession, even though that parents may sometimes want to be the conservator and want to pass the conservatorship on to a sibling of sort. Um, a sibling, the court ultimately has full authority to decide who becomes the next court appointed conservator. Other risks is just having the courts involved in your life. A lot of times, for one reason or another, we don't want to have the courts involved in our life. We want to have a more flexible process that is able to change with us with time. Next, we talk a lot about the illusion of protection. A lot of parents may want to consider a conservatorship because they think that it will provide ultimate protection over the person that is disabled, but that's not often the case. There's no extra protection if you get involved with law enforcement, there's no extra protection there. And another big thing is the cost of a conservatorship. Because it is a legal process that you have to go through with the court, it can end up being very costly. And if you end up being with a public guardian or um, a professional conservator, they're paid out of your funds as well. And so conservatorships can get very costly. And finally, we talk a lot about loss of rights. Conservatorship, you ultimately lose all of your rights. The some rights that you can lose under a conservatorship is the right to make healthcare decisions, the right where you live. As well as what types of relationships and friendships that you're able to get into. And I'll pass it off to Keisha to talk more about loss of rights.
Yes, when I was under a general conservatorship, which means I lost all my rights that Vivian talked about, I felt betrayed, and it was like a civil death because when you don't have any rights according to the court system because of the conservatorship, you is quite frustrating. You can't even decide. Sometimes you can't even decide where you want to live or who you be with, friends with, or they take away your right to vote. I mean, it's so frustrating. And when you have lots of rights, it's very frustrating for the conservative, and that's why I am promoting supportive decision making rather than conservatorship. Thank you.
Yeah, and in this section, there's a lot that you can talk about. But again, I know some people have shared that maybe they don't know too much about conservatorships and don't feel necessarily comfortable presenting on this section. And that's completely fine as well if you are going to be a presenter with us. We just want to give you the option of talking about what you can add to your story in this section. You can talk about how making choices is a human right, talking about dignity of risk, how, as an individual with a disability, you have dignity to make risks and how you should be afforded that same risk and be able to learn and fail and learn from your mistakes as well. And you can talk a lot about how does it feel to lose your rights. I can pass it off to Keisha, and how Keisha likes to share here is about drawing from her story about being under conservatorship as well.
Yes, I am. I definitely want to share my conservatorship story with you. I went to a lawyer for a different matter, and this evil attorney put me on a general conservatorship without telling me or my parents. I lost all 7 rights that we told you about earlier. When I lost my rights, I felt violated by the evil attorney in the court system. I felt betrayed because I am fully capable of using supportive decision making to make informed decisions about my own life. Making decisions for oneself, as we stated, is a human right. The principle acknowledges that taking risks is the fundamental aspect of living full and meaningful life, and that individuals should have the autonomy to make decisions that affect their well being, including the possibility of facing challenges and failures. By experiencing challenges and failures, we have the ability to run more independently in our lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Keisha. And so, those are some examples of how you can incorporate your own lived experience in the section about risk of conservatorships. And so then we'll go into our next section, which is all about introduction to supported decision making. And this kind of stems from the content that we had from our last section, talking about what is supported decision making. Again, supported decision making is where you can make decisions on your own with support of with the help of your supporters, and your supporters help you make the informed decisions by helping you understand process, but also to understand and share out what your preferences and decisions are as well. And so, next we'll talk about in introduction to supported decision making is a circle of support, which is a very big deal, and it's all about surrounding yourselves with people to help support you who understand what your decision making process is like. And again, you're in the driver's seat. You're the one that decides who gets to be a part of your circle of support and when and where they give you that support. So, what does supported decision making look like? It looks different for everyone, and it's flexible and it can change. Maybe I want to use supported decision making when I when I make financial decisions. Maybe I want to use supported decision making for healthcare decisions, but maybe I don't want to use supported decision making in other areas. It's flexible and you can use it how you want, and you can surround yourself with those types of supporters. Advantages to supported decision making compared to conservatorship is the big emphasis is the circle of support. It expands the people around you who are supporting you. Whereas conservatorship is just one person making all the decisions for you. Here, you're surrounded by people who understand your capacity and understand how to make decisions for you, the decisions with you. And so the big emphasis here is you don't have to get the court system involved. This is a flexible process. And I think that's a big thing that we want to emphasize in all of our trainings here is you don't need to get the courts involved. You can decide yourself what your supporters look like and how they support you. And I know Keisha wanted to talk more about what a circle of support can look like.
Yes, I just want to give you an example of my own circle of support. My own circle of support is usually my service coordinator, my independent facilitator, my case manager for my supported living agency, and the clinical case supervisor from my supported living um, um, agency. And so, for your circle of support, it could be anyone that you find supportive to you. It could be family, friends, service providers, or any other people that have your best interest at heart. It could be anybody. And later on, we're going to be discussing like what possible criteria that we have to choose our circle of support. Thank you.
Yeah, and then talking about how you can add to this section of our supported decision making curriculum and how you can incorporate your lived experiences is sharing how you practice supported decision making every day. Last week, we focused a lot on determining your supported decision making story, which in essence is your story, and how you practice supported decision making every day in your life. These can be small decisions from picking out what clothes you want to wear, what you want to do for the day, and it can be large financial decisions about getting a job, deciding where you want to live and who you want to live with. Other areas you can add to this is like what Keisha was talking about, who deciding who are your supporters and how do you choose your supporters. I think that's a big emphasis that people want to hear about as a self advocate as well. Talking about who you want as your support doesn't it's not just limited to family, parents, siblings. It can be staff members. It can be your friends. And Keisha can go ahead and take it away and talk more about this as well.
Sounds good. Like it's important it is important to have a certain criteria, a certain guideline on how you choose your supporters. Like my guideline that I use for my supporters is that will they be able to keep me in the driver's seat, like Vivian said. Because if I have supporters out there that are going to talk all over me and not let me make an informed decision on my on what I want to do in my life, then they're not supporters of mine. Because all of my supporters, they all have the capability of giving me supportive information, helping me weigh the differences from my different options, and then I make the informed choice. But with others, with other supporters, if like I said, if they are all over me, or if they are leaving me out of the conversation, then they're totally not my supporters. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Keisha. Again, this section is a great place for you to talk about how and who you choose to be your supporters, and in what capacity you want them to be your supporter. Maybe you want someone specifically for your financial decisions, but that same person is not the right person for you to to help you make healthcare decisions. So this is a great place to share that. Our next section is all about decision making and capacity building, especially talking about how to use supported decision making as a communication tool, how and so one of the main topics is supported decision making as a communication tool. Um, this is a great way to get you how to express your preferences. And again, this can vary so much. It can be something as formal of a process as sitting down and creating a person-centered plan, thinking about your goals and aspirations and who you are as a person. But it could be as simple as facial expressions and gestures to talk about how do you express your preferences for decisions. Next is talking about how to support your communication preferences. Um, A supporter can help you do this by using things such as choice boards, um, facilitating a conversation, using video or audio aids for you to understand. Keisha will continue to talk about it, but it is all about helping you make an informed decision, and your supporters supporting you to get to that point of making that informed decision, making sure you understand all of the options laid out for you and understand them clearly. And that goes into this next point about explaining choices clearly, helping others understand the pros and the cons of a decision, getting all the information out. And so I'll pass it off to Keisha to talk more about making informed decisions using supported decision making.
Thank you, Vivian. Like when I make informed decisions, making informed decisions, it gives respect for individual rights. Informed decision making respects the individual's right for autonomy and empowers them to take control of their own life. It acknowledges that people have the ca- um, ca- capacity to make choices, even though they do sometimes require support. And it also has better quality for decision making. When people when people with disabilities have access to important information and support, they are more likely to make choices that agree with their needs and goals. This can lead to better personal health and financial outcomes for people with disabilities. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Keisha, for sharing more about that. And again, how can you incorporate your lived experience? Just like Keisha said, you can talk about how having your voice heard impacts your healthcare decisions and your financial well being. You can also share how you express your preferences using a letter board, AAC, thing, or expressions. Other things you can do is to think about a time where supporters may have helped you make an informed decision. I think about a time where I'm a supporter for someone with a disability, and they were deciding whether or not they want to take get their vaccinations and get a TB test for a job that they had to pursue. And so we laid out the options. If you aren't able to get this vaccination, you won't be able to participate in this job or internship in your full capacity. And so we talked about what all the different options are and what it would mean if it were to take the vaccination. We talked about their fears as well as what the process would be like. And so I'll pass it off to Keisha to talk more about adding to this section of the curriculum as well.
Yes, definitely. I often think about how my supporters helped me to make an informed decision. How did you feel about making informed choice with your supportive decision making with your supporters? Like like to tell a personal story on what Vivian just said. I work for a very large employer, and it's mandated for everybody to have a flu vaccination, and they give you a choice. If you want to opt out of the flu vaccination, then for the rest of your time at this employer, you're going to have to wear a mask whenever you go out to the public. And so I decided to I made an informed decision to have my flu shot because I don't like masks very much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Keisha. Next, this final section, here you can have a big impact here on our section on supported decision making in action. And what will we talk about in this section at our trainings? The big part is exploring decision supports. Who is your supporter, and how and when do you want to get their support, and how much support do you want for these types of decisions? We talk about supported decision making in healthcare, how you can supplement supported decision making with other documents such as powers of attorneys, and other documents. We talked about supported decision making in finances, in education, and other areas as well, such as voting, involvement with law enforcement, as well as in advocacy. And so, in all of these sections, we talk about the logistics of using supported decision making, as well as other helpful tools you can use in conjunction with supported decision making, such as having a joint bank account for finances, creating a CalAble account. And in education, it's all about how to get your voice heard and making those decisions at school, such as being involved in your IEP process and things like that. And for supported decision making in other areas, such as in voting, it's talking about how you can make an informed vote. What processes and what supports do you need in that area? And so then I'll pass it off to Keisha for more on supported decision making in healthcare as well as in finances.
Yes, when like to give you an example in using SDM in healthcare, whenever I go to a doctor's office, I always bring a member of my circle of support with me. Primarily my case manager at my supportive living agency, and they is much better for me to have four eyes and four ears in the medical doctor's appointment with me, because then the doctor talks to me with my case manager listening, and they give me the options for treatment for medical conditions I have, and then I talk with my case manager about what option is good. Like I go through a pro and cons list of the treatment options, and then after that I make my informed decision and tell the doctor what treatment course I want to take. In terms of finances, I don't know much about finances, but let's give an example of applying for a secured credit card. If I because I don't understand credit card applications very much, and so I'll talk it off with my case manager from the supportive living agency, and they can read the contract that they have in credit card applications with me. I could choose what features that I want in my credit card and do pros and cons lists with my case manager again. And then after that, I could apply for a credit card, a other secured credit card, while protecting my credit score. And so that's how I use SDM in both healthcare and financial matters.
Thank you, Keisha. And like this section is all about supported decision making in action. So, where your co trainer can talk about maybe the different forms that they can use or different processes that they can use, this is really your chance to share your story as a self advocate about how you use supported decision making in these types of decisions, how supporters support you, just like how Keisha said. And it's all about making those examples relatable to the audience as well. And so, again, this is your chance to share your supported decision making story, highlighting one of the opportunities you were able to use supported decision making in your life. Give scenarios, just like how Keisha talked about in healthcare, how she has a member of her support team there in order for her to understand all of her options for treatment for her conditions. And another big thing is talking about how do you advocate? How do you advocate for yourself, for your voice, especially when we talk about
Mm.
supported decision making? How do you advocate to be a part of different processes, such as your IEP, your IPP? How do you advocate outside of that for supported decision making as well? This section is all about you and all about sharing your story and providing the audiences that will be training about practical examples of how to use supported decision making to convince them why supported decision making is the better way and the best option, as well as the least restrictive option. And finally, we want to talk more about your audience. Like the training that you were to watch for homework, and we'll put the link in the chat again for you to view that as well. That training was directed towards family members as well as some self advocates. But as a co presenter with us and doing these trainings, we're going to train lots of different audiences as well. And so it's important to know your audiences so you can change your impact depending on who you're presenting in front of. Maybe it's parents, maybe it's self advocates or educators, lawyers, maybe even regional center staff. You want to change the types of stories you tell, as well as how you present yourself, depending on the audience. For example, for parents, they might be concerned about protecting their child, and you can talk about decision making. How decision making and share supported decision making and sharing that amongst a circle of support will protect you more than just having a single conservator. In in a training in front of other self advocates, it might be best to talk about decision making as a human right and how it is your right, despite what supports you may need, despite whether or not you have a disability, to be able to have supported decision making. In front of educators, it'd be great to share stories or practical examples of using supported decision making at the school level, talking about how to be involved in your IEP process, to be involved in the decisions that you make at school and the goals that you set there. For lawyers, it can be like what Keisha was talking about, sharing your story. Maybe you've also had to go through a conservatorship or you've gone through the law system and your voice wasn't heard. So, this is your chance to share your story there. And with regional center staff, it's all about sharing about your experience with your service coordinator, as well as the IPP process, and sharing how you can use supported decision making there. And I'll pass it off more to Keisha, who has done different trainings in front of different audiences to talk more about knowing demographics of your audience.
Yes, exactly. I've been on my public speaking journey for the last 30 years. And when I do a speech for any client, public speaking client, then I always do a audience analysis. And it's important to know the demographics of your audience, like the age, gender, cultural background, education level, and who they are personally. It also allows you to tailor your speech content to ensure that it connects with your audience with more about their interest and their experience levels. The this important facts can make your message more impactful. And I during speeches I also check my language and speaking tone, because different demographics, like if I'm speaking to a younger crowd, then I might be more casual. But if I'm speaking to a professional crowd, I'm more formal. It depends on the demographics of it. And I always check when I speak in front of audiences in person. I always check my body language, and I always make eye contact with my audience, because when you understand the audience's mood, by checking eye contact and reading the room, then you can understand how to to tailor your speech to so that the audience is getting what they need. However, in Zoom meetings like this, it's impossible to make eye contact, and so I do my usual stuff, and hopefully it's hitting home. Thank you.
Thank you, Keisha. And to kind of continue on that, it's all about knowing who your audience is. What is their relationship
You're
to this
done.
topic? Why do they care? What is their level of knowledge? And what is their position in this? So, for example, we can talk about educators, teachers. Let's say you're presenting to teachers. What's their relationship to this topic? They may be having a classroom full of self advocates. education is also a big driver of conservatorships. That's also another way they have a relationship to this topic as well. Why do they care? Think about what the relationship there is to their students, as well as their students' families, and how they're involved in the IEP process. Maybe their level of knowledge about supported decision making is really low. And in that case, it's our chance to show them and teach them about this new thing, supported decision making, how they can implement it in their classroom, helping students use supported decision making to make decisions about their school day. And think about what their position is. Maybe they're really open to learning about supported decision making, but maybe they might not be. And maybe they're more of a proponent about conservatorship. And that changes what stories we should share and how we present on these different topics. And so, before we open it up to questions and answers, we just wanted to recap the different categories, different sections of our curriculum that you'll be sharing on if you are to be a co trainer with DVU for a supported decision making series. So, our first section will be on risks of conservatorships, talking all about what it is a conservatorship, how you can get into a conservatorship, as well as the risks of being in it. Um, Next section is introducing people to supported decision making, talking about what supported decision making even is, how you can use it, where you can use it, the flexibility of it, and what it looks like with creating a circle of support. Next, we'll talk about decision making and the importance of making sure that your preferences are heard and how you can do that and how supporters play a role in supporting your decision making. And finally, the last section of our trainings is supported decision making in action, how you use it in different scenarios from healthcare to finances to education. And so those are the main four sections of all of our base curriculum for our supported decision making series. And so we wanted to give you a chance to get to know what's in our curriculum. Today was just kind of a summary of each of the sections, but if you watch the training that Michaela has put in the chat, you can see in depth our training as well as how a self advocate co-trainer integrates themselves into the curriculum, how they talk to the points, share information on the slides, but also integrate and add their lived experiences and stories throughout it as well. And finally, we'll talk about knowing your audience and how that plays a role there. So finally, we'll open it up to any questions people may have for our section today before we move into breakout groups and what we'll talk into the different breakout groups.
Vivian, we have a question from 147. I know Elena mentioned that you start with a petition, but somebody asked if Keisha would talk a little bit about how she was able to get out of her conservatorship.
Oh yes, I am. I would be honored to answer that question. The I was assigned a public conservator, public guardian, and about 3 months later, the public guardian, after meeting with me, she went to the courts and she said, "Why is Keisha on a general conservatorship?" Because she doesn't need to be. She is fully capable of making her own informed decisions. And so I am so grateful to this general guardian for saying that to the courts, and that I didn't have to pay attorneys to get out, because I know it is very difficult to get outside a conservatorship.
Thank you much for sharing your story, Keisha. Other like Elena has listed there that you have to file for a petition in the court. In our supported decision making handbook, it also goes over some other ways of how you can exit a conservatorship in different points in the process. And we'll also be creating more resources on that to be shared in the future as well. Are there any other questions, comments, any other things people had in regards to our curriculum and what we talked about today? Feel free to type it in the chat or as well as raise your hand to ask any questions that you may have. Hi, Vanessa. I see your hand is raised. Go ahead, Vanessa.
So I had a question. I watched like a little bit of the video, like 37 minutes, and I noticed that Bella and William, SDM wasn't an option for them at first. They were like in conservatorship. So I'm just like kind of wondering, like when did SDM start? Does that
Yeah,
make sense what I'm asking?
Yeah, so supported decision making officially was signed into law in California in 2022 with a bill known as AB 1663. And so it was signed in 2022 and then it went into effect in 2023. So supported decision making as a law and as like a legal concept is rather new. And it was introduced as an alternative to conservatorship. Um, for people to exit conservatorships, but also to increase autonomy that people have in their daily life and have more choice and control over their decision making.
Oh, so it sounds like they turned 18 before supported decision making. Yeah,
Yeah,
okay, now it all makes sense because I was like, you mentioned that in the first training, but there's just so much information. And then you watch the video, so thank you so much.
no problem. Hi, Sarah. You had a question, Sarah?
Sarah, you're muted right now. I did tell you. Yep, there we go.
There you go. Thanks. Sorry. When you're ready, Sarah, I'm here. Hi. Thank you both so much for inspiring hope in me. I'm curious how I can ensure my rights are protected from people who, when you're ready, I'm feeling. Can you type that again? Slow. Threatened by conservatorship. Deleting. Start over, please. Would I need a lawyer or just choose a representative in my circle of support? Any advice?
Thank you, Sarah, for sharing those concerns. I think a big part of that is it's a difficult question in the sense that we are sorry if you are feeling that way and if there are people or supporters that you view close in your life that may be threatening that case. There's definitely lawyers that can be reached out to in that case, and there's also other processes like other people have mentioned before, to stop conservatorship from going through that process if it hasn't been officially started yet with a hearing or so. There's more information about it in our handbook, and we hope to hold more sessions to learn about it to ensure that you are able to protect your rights.
Thank you. Yes. I'm looking I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you, Sarah. Are there any other questions that anyone may have before we start to lead out into the breakout groups?
Jennifer had a comment at 2:16. You could look at, I mean, Michaela answered it, but it might be good for everybody.
Yeah. Okay. I see Jennifer says, are you looking for speakers who have been a part of SDM as adults, or interested for speakers who may have disabilities but have not personally used SDM? I mean, I think Michaela's response to this captures it very well. Even if we didn't know that we were using supported decision making, everyone every day uses supported decision making in some capacity. I think when it got put into law, now it seems like this brand new concept when it's really something that a lot of us have been practicing every day in our lives already. Now it's just making ourselves aware of that and ensuring everyone has the ability to practice it. Like fears that Sarah has shared and Keisha has shared, a lot of people may be pressured into the conservatorship system. And we really want to push and talk about how supported decision making can be an alternative. And that starts with sharing your story. And as someone with a disability as a self-advocate, you do use supported decision making in some capacity. And so it'd be great for you to think about that and to be able to share your lived experiences in supported decision making to be a part of that. So in a sense, maybe you didn't know you were practicing supported decision making, but you have this whole time as a person with the disability, and that type of experience will be very beneficial in a part of these trainings. All right. Any other questions people may have from our session today? Okay. With that being said, we can go ahead and slowly move. Michaela will put it into breakout groups. For our breakout sessions today, we're going to be talking about each of the different sections for our supported decision-making curriculum. So we'll talk about risks of conservatorships, the introduction to supported decision-making, as well as supported decision-making in action. And so a part of your discussion today will be talking about how you want to co-present on these topics. Again, DVU has already created these slides and we'll be sure to share these slides with everyone, but it's all up to you how you want to talk about each of these topics. So we'll begin to discuss what you want to share on each of the slides, whether it's your lived experience, your story, as well as how you want to present on each of these different topics as well. Hi, Jesse, go ahead.
Hello. So, I understand from what you just said that there might already be that there's sections on like the healthcare, education, all of that you're going to be separating us into the breakout rooms. Is that accurate?
So we're going to go ahead and for each of the breakout rooms, we'll talk about each of the different sections in each of the breakout rooms. So you
Oh, okay.
have to choose a breakout room for a specific section.
So it's not going to be like that.
Yeah. So you'll have the
Okay.
chance to talk about a little bit of everything you can think about. Maybe one section you were more passionate about, Jesse, and you can prompt the moderator in there to begin maybe talking about that section. Maybe you want to talk about using it in healthcare first. and things like that. But you'll have the opportunity to talk about each of the different sections in the breakout groups.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, so right now for the breakout rooms, we're starting about 5 minutes early. So the time that they will end will be 2:55. If we end up being done with discussion early, we can end early again. But we have enough moderators to have really small groups today, so everybody will get a chance to talk on the sections that they want to talk on. ASL will be staying in this room, so you won't get asked to go to a different room if I know you need ASL. If you want to raise your hand right now so I can make sure I have anyone who needs ASL in this room.
Yeah, I do. Thank
Yeah,
you.
I've got you, Gary. I just wanted to make sure there wasn't anybody else. Okay, so it's going to ask you in just a second. You're going to have to confirm that you're ready to enter your breakout room, okay? They're all open. We're counting down, Vivian. Going down one at a time.
I know everyone leaves slowly.
Kayla, can you make me a co-host so that I can go into various rooms?
You got it.
Thanks.
Judy, are you still here?
Yes, Judy is still here.
I am.
Okay. Definitely free to move about the rooms. If you have time to pop into room 3, I think this is Brian's first time being a moderator.
Got it. We'll
Thank
do
you.
right now.
Okay. We've still got a lot of extra people in here, it looks like. Let me try and get everybody to their right. Oh, lost. There we go. There we go. Okay, German. If you're still here, go into your breakout room. Regina too.
I think German.
Yeah, we got German.
I'm waiting to get into your room.
Regina, you are?
No, I think
this is Tao. I'm waiting to get into your room.
Oh, no. Stay here. You're in this one, Tao. This is a room 2.
Oh, okay.
Okay, you're good, Vivian. The only person here is Regina, so hopefully there's a switch in a second.
sounds good. How is everyone doing today? I think we have Gary, Vanessa, Marisol, Tao, and Regina. And I think Gilda, you're just joining to listen in today, right, Gilda?
Yes.
Okay. How is everyone doing today?
Good.
Doing good.
Okay. Maybe we can do a quick round of introductions. I know some people were in this breakout room last week, but not everyone was. So we can go ahead and start with brief introductions, maybe what your name is, where you're from, and what program that did you complete at DVU before attending this training here. So hi everyone, again, my name is Vivian. I learned about DVU a couple years ago when I attended their self-determination conference, and now I'm back here on staff on our supported decision-making team, and I'm out here in Southern California. Maybe someone else wants to introduce themselves off to the group.
I can go. My name is Vanessa and I live in Orange County, and I have been a part of like the Emerging Leaders Program and also the Self Advocate Speakers Bureau. I think it's now called Self Advocate Speakers Training, and now this class.
Yeah, glad to have you, Vanessa.
Thank you.
My name is Tao Tran. I currently reside in Fresno County, originally from Southern California. I was a part of the Emerging Leaders program, part of the ambassador, did many other trainings here, and now I'm in this class, hoping to help others understand SDM as well as self-determination, two very different concepts.
Thank you, Tao. Hey, Gary, Regina, or Marisol wants to introduce themselves. And Gilda, too, if you.
Hi,
Hi,
my name
Gary.
is Gary Walker, and I'm from Santa Barbara, and I have been in San Diego for over a decade now, and I was a part of the Pictures Bill in 2023. Been a great experience, and being a part of this, um, an emerging leader, and so being a part of this process has been very exciting. So I'm looking forward to continue to be a part of DVU.
Thanks
Thank
so
you.
much. Thank you, Gary.
Hi, I'll go next. I am Gilda Huron, and I am the Director of Outreach and Leadership Training here at Disability Voices United. And I'm so happy to see Vanessa here, Tal, Gary, and I see Regina Weber, who's also part of our current cohort of our Emerging Leaders program. Welcome. Hi, everyone.
Thank you, Gilda. And then maybe Regina or Marisol wants to introduce themselves if they're able to.
Hi, I'm Marisol, not Marisol.
Marisol, I'm sorry about
I'm
that.
originally from Puerto Rico, but I live in San Francisco now. And I'm the Assistive Technology Coordinator at Independent Living Resource Center, San Francisco. And so I did the speakers, the advocate speakers training. And I'm doing this because I want to be able to help my clients if they ever get faced with conservatorship so that they'll know they have options.
Thank you, Marisol. Yeah, it's all about understanding what options are available. Like Vanessa helped us point out earlier, it's very new, this concept still. And so making sure people know what their options are so they don't have to go to conservatorship, which is the most restrictive option there is. And then I'm not sure if Regina is with us. If Regina's here, if you want to introduce yourself as well. If not, that's okay. We can go ahead and talk about the different supported decision-making sections again. I'll briefly go over each of the sections again, and maybe we can pick out one of the sections that we are most interested in first to kind of talk through about how you would want to present on this section as well. So just as a reminder, the sections are risk of conservatorships, introduction to supported decision-making, decision-making and capacity building, as well as supported decision-making in action. Is there one of these sections that we're feeling most passionate about right now that we want to start off with? Otherwise, we can just go in order through this section as well. Not, we can just go in order so we can start off with our risk of conservatorship section. So one of the first things is maybe we want to discuss about how making decisions is a human right and how we feel about that topic, as well as like dignity of risk and um, the importance of being allowed to make mistakes.
Vivian, can you put them in the chat?
Yeah, let me go ahead and type that in the chat. I just put some of our discussion points in the chat.
I have a question. So like I have never been in a conservatorship, so like would I still be able to like talk about the risk of conservatorship just being part of this class, or is this something more like for someone that's been in a conservatorship?
Yeah, so even if you haven't been in a conservatorship, you can definitely talk about what the risks are. I think if you are at a training, we would definitely have a session where we can talk to you more, different talking points that you can talk about it. But again, if it's something that you aren't comfortable talking about, that's not something that you are required to present on as well either. We just include it in all of our trainings so that people understand what the differences are.
Mhm.
Um, but you can share about other feelings that people may have in regards to conservatorship. So, like one of these discussion points, the big fear about conservatorships is whether or not making choices and decision making, is that a human right? And you can share about your experience as a self advocate about why you might feel that it is a human right, why this is a civil rights issue. You can talk also about dignity of risk and um, how it is important to be able to be allowed to make these decisions for yourself, to fail and to learn from it. And you can also share how you feel in general about the being able to choose, the right of being able to choose based on your disability as a self advocate as well. So you can definitely still present on this section if you've never been in a conservatorship before, but again, not necessary as well. Yes, Tao.
Um, yeah, I do have concerns about conservatorships because it does not really align with what the UN state in their the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. And in that it does say somewhere in Article 3, Article 12, Article 19, Article 29 that we have to recognize people with disabilities, that they have the capacity, that they should be provided the support to exercise their own rights. We should allow them to live independently, the life that they want to live. We should also allow them to fully participate in society. But that's not happening because we have all these institutions that are dictating how disabled people should live.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing that, Tao. Like you said, the United Nations Convention did talk about how decision making is a human right. And I think that is a big thing to discuss in this section if you're presenting on this section, talking about why we should presume competence and how, under a conservatorship, you're presuming that these individuals are not competent to make their own decisions, and how that makes you feel as a self advocate as well. Yes, Marisol.
Can a parent just put a child in conservatorship even if the child objects?
So, as of right now, conservatorship hearing can take place without the individual with a disability even there. So, unfortunately, there are probably cases of that happening as well. And I think a lot of times we talk about conservatorship as this bad thing, and we talk about it in a way where it's the most restrictive option, and we're preventing their rights, and it results in the loss of their rights. I think a lot of parents, though, they're thinking about the protection of their child, and so I don't want to just automatically fault all these parents that think that conservatorship is the option. And I think we just want to begin kind of that discussion of what other alternatives are there, um, to allow them to make decisions and in that capacity without having to go all the way to conservatorships. But to answer your question, it can be possible because it right now with with this current system, the person with a disability doesn't even have to be present in the court office for the conservatorship hearing to take place. And I believe even in Keisha's case, that's what happened. She wasn't even in the room when they put the conservatorship over her. All right. Any other points that we might want to share about or questions that we might have on this conservatorship section? Okay. We can go into this next section on introduction to supported decision making, which I think is more tangible and more something that we might I know like when working with Mod Squad like Bella and William, they really enjoy speaking on these sections. So for supported decision making introduction, some of the talking points we think about for you to include is to maybe give an example of a way that you use supported decision making in your life. Maybe you can even share how you choose the people you want to support you. Is there anyone wanting to share a little more about these topics and how you would want to present on these topics? I can give an example to start us off. Maybe for the supported decision-making section, one of the examples I like to use for even my life is supported decision making in healthcare. Anytime I go to the doctors and something is going on, like for example, recently I had an MRI scan that showed something in my brain that wasn't completely right. And so from there, I needed to know what my treatment options were, what my plans were, and what the course of action was. And even though I'm an adult, I wanted my supporters to be there with me to understand what all the options were. And so some people that I include in my life as my supporter are my parents. Um, but my parents aren't necessarily the most knowledgeable about healthcare. So other people I include in my circle is my uncle who happens to be a doctor. And so those are examples of how I can use supported decision making in my life and how I can decide um, who is there as my supporter. Does anyone want to share what they would want to share about in this section?
So I have like an example kind of. So kind of going along the lines of healthcare is something I notice is like when I go with my parents, they tend to like the doctors tend to like talk to my parents instead of me. And so I started not inviting my parents into the like into my doctor's appointments. And then so the doctor would like talk to me directly, but then I realized like it kind of made me sad not to have my parents there. So just this training in general and hearing like Williams and Bella's story, like kind of taught me like other ways to kind of use SDM, but also have my parents in there if I wanted to, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I'm very like kind of grateful for this training. Um, but yeah, that's probably um my most recent kind of thing that I would use SDM for, but I assume that like as I go through different stages of my life, there'll be other like um ways to use it.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing for healthcare. And I think you can also think about, like you were saying, how and when you want to use that support. Maybe you do want them in the room. And then it becomes a conversation of talking to your doctors and telling them, hey, these are my supporters in my room, but I still would like you to address me when we're
Mhm.
talking about our concerns, right? I think
Right.
that happens a lot of times when I speak to other self advocates, that when you're in a room, sometimes they don't talk to you. They talk about with your supporters, your communication partner, and things like that. And so I think it's starting that conversation at home with your parents if you want them in the room, being like having them make sure that the doctor addresses you. Other ways you can use support is maybe you don't want them in the room, Vanessa, but maybe you want to talk to them about your options afterwards. Those are other options. Other things I hear about people talking about is having them on the phone with you in the doctor's office instead of them in person. But it's up to you to decide. And again, it can change. Maybe you want to test it out. Maybe, like you said, you tested it without them being in there, but then you decided that you do want them present there. There's so many ways that you can use their support in that type of situation.
Yeah. I think I see some hands raised.
Yeah. Marisol?
When I worked in the school district with students that had used communication devices, when I would take them to the store, people would ask me, so what does he want? I said, ask him. He will tell you. And then when they go to give the change, I said, give it to him. So I made them acknowledge the person they were dealing with instead of me.
Yeah. I think that's a big thing that we can do as someone's supporter is advocating for them and advocating for them to use supported decision making in that way, making sure that they are the person that is being acknowledged, not other people. And I think, like you're saying, it's a great way, especially if someone is using an AAC device or another communication device, making sure they have time to process and be a part of the conversation. I think sometimes in-person conversations or even like we're doing right now on Zoom, things can be very fast-paced. And if you type to communicate or you use a communication partner, it can be very easy to get lost in that conversation if people don't take a moment to pause and recognize what your support needs are. And so I think it's important to talk about that with your support and how you want them to advocate for you, as well as what types of support you need in different types of settings. Thank you for sharing that, Tao. Go ahead, Tao. I think you're muted right now.
Um, yeah, the SDM can be used when they're very young in the school setting. That should be practiced when they're very young to give them ample opportunities to um, practice making their own choices. Um, it's really important for us to know that when you have a conservator or a guardian, um, you're not only not giving the person the ability to make choices, but also you're setting them up for potentially being abused by that caregiver or guardian. So we need to really go back to what's important to them, not for them. Because when you look at what's important for them, you basically not giving them the opportunity to empower them to make choices on their own. You're enabling them to be even more disabled. Who say that a disabled person cannot ask for help? It's okay to be interdependent. We just need the right people who know what they're doing to support disabled people.
Thank you, Tao, so much for sharing. I think those are all some really important points. I think a lot of times, even in the school setting, I've seen before where there's this focus on telling the person who's disabled to not make the wrong decision, to not have the ability to do anything wrong or to not know what the answer is and to seek help. And I think that's something that we want to change. We want to change this mindset of you can use support and you should use support. We all use support, but that doesn't impact your ability to make these decisions. And I think that goes well into our next section on decision making. So I just shared some talking points or discussion points in the chat as well. Different types of decision making, maybe sharing how in just the decision making section, you can share about how you express your preferences, or talking about a time supporters helped you make an informed decision. Um, I think one of these things, this section on expressing preferences is a really big one. And as a role of, especially for the role of the supporter, understanding how you like to communicate what your preferences are. Again, whether that's using a letter board, giving you time to use AAC, maybe you express it verbally, or maybe you use facial expressions. I think one story that that is shared in our supported decision making handbook. Decision making handbook is a person is trying to decide their caregivers. And so they're a part of this process of interviewing different caregivers for themselves. But how they express their preferences is in facial expressions. When they listen to one person speak, you can notice that they're smiling more or more engaged in the conversation. Whereas another person, they seem a bit more disengaged and not as connected. And as a supporter, it's important to recognize those differences so you're able to help them express what their preferences are and to make different decisions. Is there anything else we'd like to share on this section for decision making? I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but not sure if Gary, Vanessa, Tao, Marisol, anyone wants to share more.
I can share more. As far as like my decision making goes, for the most part, like my support system, like I will ask them to like explain things to me if I need like explanation, um, more than like what the doctor says, because like there's some situations where like I need things broken down, because just the information is too overwhelming, or just I'll take all the information home with me and then like make a decision, or like review the information and then come back with a decision. Because there's just some times where you should probably not make a decision on the spot without like having the time to like digest and process the information. So I guess a time that happened was just like a medical thing that I had, where I had like all these options and it was just like all the information, and I just took it home and reviewed all the information and came back with a decision that was best for me, and everything turned out well. So
Thank you so much for sharing, Vanessa. I think, like you said, that's a really big point of you don't have to make a decision right now. I think sometimes, like, especially in a doctor's office, it feels like you need to make that decision immediately right there, but maybe you need to take a pause. And like you said, review it almost like homework afterwards, right? To break it down, maybe watch some YouTube videos about what the treatment options are, talk to multiple people. When I think about healthcare in particular, um, in all communities, not just the disabled community, everyone values this idea of getting a second opinion, right? And I think that's something that we should value here within the disabled community. Talking about, thinking about getting a second opinion, helping you make these decisions, and it doesn't happen. It doesn't have to happen right away. You need to take a pause, really think through what your options are. And I'm glad that your supporters are able to help you do that, Vanessa. Okay, and then we can go ahead and go into our final section here, which is supported decision-making in action, which I feel like we have been talking about a little bit in all of the different sections, but here we're talking about it more explicitly, sharing supported decision-making in a healthcare setting, in the school setting, in finances or other areas, or talking more about how you want to advocate for yourself and others while trying to use supported decision making. I think Marisol brought up a great story earlier about ensuring people are talking to whoever you're supporting rather than you as the supporter. And I think that's a big thing, making sure things are person-centered and centered around the individual that's ultimately making the decision. I think we are closing the breakout room soon, but is there anything that anyone would like to share for this section? I think we have about a minute left in this breakout group. Just wanted to thank everyone for sharing all their stories. I really appreciate you sharing all your stories. I hope you were able to learn something today and are excited to share more about it in the future. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I think we're all slowly starting to come back.
Oh, I apologize for not responding to you early. I went to the restroom, that's why.
No worries, Sherman. Glad to have you here, though. All right. Michaela, is everyone back from the sections now?
It looks like it number-wise, but let me make sure.
Okay.
Yeah, they're all closed.
Okay, perfect. I know sometimes we just get stuck in those sections and can't get out sometimes. So I just wanted to give everyone a chance to come back and maybe share their experiences in the different breakout groups, maybe wanting to share what they talked about there, wanting to add into the conversation, bringing it back to the larger group here. If there's anyone that would like to share, just feel free to raise your hand so that you can unmute and share more. I see Sarah's hand raised. Go ahead, Sarah.
When you're ready, Sarah, you just support. Okay. I was inspired by, please, the self-advocates in my group who advocated for including their trusted circle of support and taking initiative to start and pursue self-determination program to protect themselves. I also am doing this and am trying to ensure my communication is protected so I can choose exclamation points.
Thank you so much for sharing, Sarah. I think you bring up some really important points, how supported decision making ensures that your communication can be protected. Your communication partner and your other supporters can help you communicate and share and make those decisions and ultimately choose, help you choose and for you to decide these important things. And I think you also talk a lot. It's really important how you talk about how this ties into the self-determination program and how it's all about autonomy and making sure that you are the one that's in the driver's seat, and that you have choice and control over your life and making those decisions. So thank you so much for sharing, Sarah.
My pleasure. Yes.
All right. I think I saw Jennifer's hand up. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Yeah, Keisha was great in my group. I really appreciated what she had to say. She and I both talked about like having people talk around us instead of to us, and how having people who are part of a supported decision-making team helped us to address those challenges. So that was something that was like about the whole idea of like creating autonomy and um, building capacity and having the decision making actually be actionable, that we were able to like get people to understand that they needed to talk to us, that we were the ultimate decision maker and we were the person who would ask for help from our team if we needed it, but not to be worked around or talked around.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing, Jennifer. I think that was also a big point, big talking point in my group as well. A lot of times people are talking about us around us, but we aren't the ones included in the conversation. And for supported decision making, we want to be able to flip that switch so that you, again, since you're the one in the driver's seat, you're the one making the decision, that you're the one that's being talked to. I know others in my group talked about how that's not just the one in formal settings, but even in informal settings, such as going when you're out in the grocery store, someone handing you the change versus handing it to your supporter. When you're asking them a question about what you want to buy, you're asking the self-advocate, not necessarily their supporters. And I think that's a big thing that we want to talk about in all of these types of settings. As well. So thank you so much for sharing, Jennifer. Is there anyone else that wants to share out maybe what they talked about in their group as well? Or even some of the moderators can share out what was shared in their group too. Go ahead, Carly. I see you have your hand raised.
Hi, so I feel like SDM is a big factor, or could be a big factor in healthcare and education systems, because I mean, I just became a self-advocate speaker through DVU, and I'm seeing a lot more. I'm seeing it a lot more where people are trying to, they're independent, they're somewhat independent, or they're not independent, but they don't really want that conservatorship route just yet, and they might want to take a different route, like a power of attorney or now SDM. Like, it's just a big factor. And I just became a IEP consultant coach, so I can help people with IEPs and IPPs to regional centers. And I'm really getting the message out there through my Instagram and Facebook pages that there are more options than just conservatorship. There's SDM, and there's different things that you could look at. And I feel like I'm a super big advocate for the healthcare system and the education world for this type of space. So I feel like this is a great opportunity for people for this, for that type of space.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing, Carly. And I really admire your passion for this topic and your work as helping people with IEPs and IPPs. I believe in the new IPP process, there's even a section on supported decision making or your circle of support and expanding that as well. And I think all of those are such big topics. And like you said, especially for healthcare and education, there's a lot of different alternatives we have that isn't conservatorship, using supported decision making in conjunction with things like a power of attorney. And there's other things as well to help, other forms and other processes that you can use that doesn't involve the court system that will still enable you to be a part of the decision making process. Anyone else want to share out on maybe what they talked about?
I can talk about a little bit about our group.
Go ahead, Darlene.
Without naming names, I guess, or maybe I will name names. In our group, I think it was nice because people were sharing their stories about where they use it, and Jesse in particular had a great kind of problem solving story about how he went from here's how I live my life, how I was living my life, and then I had to speak up for myself and bring my family in and talk to my family about how I wanted to do things. And so that's a good example of even getting started in the process, of speaking up for yourself in the first place. It's not that they were thinking wrong of him. It was just that it wasn't exactly his wishes. And so that's a perfect example. And he talked about taking risks and wanting to be able to take a risk and try something and fail. And then hearing his family talk about why they were worried for him. So that kind of story, I think, is a good story to cultivate and not recreate it, but just kind of nurture it so that we can really make it solid, and it will speak to people really well. And then people were talking a lot about healthcare and a little bit about finances and living situations. Connie speaking about her living situation and how she chose to move out. That was her decision. So I think that people are, I appreciate that you're all getting into what's your story and how can you share it in a way that it can impact people.
Thank you so much for sharing, Yolene, and sharing the stories that your group shared. I think it is really important to find the different niches of different stories. And I think one of the big points that I want to drive home from what you shared is just the idea of dignity of risk. I think a lot of times there's this fear, and because of fear, we push this idea that we talked about it in our group as well, that you feel like you can't seek out help and that you can't make the wrong choice as someone with a disability, that is frowned upon. But in other areas of life, people are afraid from getting a second opinion, for getting help from others. And I think that's something that we need to cultivate in this space as well, that it is okay to have supporters and to make these decisions with support of others.
Yeah.
See, Monica, go ahead. I think, Monica, you're muted if you are talking, Monica.
I am. Thank you. Similar to what you were saying about risk, that was a topic in our group. And with a couple of the individuals, they were reflecting back on when they were younger, and the schools made choices that they could not play a sport due to their disability. And so they wanted that chance, the dignity of risk, to try to learn, to get hurt. And so they had to advocate for themselves. And in those instances, they had school or family members assist them with that. So it's a combination of when something's taken away and being able to use your skills in advocacy. And we also discussed how the more you advocate for yourself, they're building blocks, you get better at it. And so I thought that was a great conversation.
Thank you so much for sharing, Monica. I agree. I think these are all building blocks. And I think, especially when we're talking about supported decision making, this is not something you learn overnight. These are choices and decisions that you slowly make and build and you learn as well. I see Brian has his hand raised. Go ahead, Brian.
Thanks, Vivian. Wow, my group was amazing. It was so humbling and enriching to hear the stories of the group that I moderated, the group of people that I moderated. So we touched on a couple of things of healthcare, education, finances. But the one thing that really struck me the most was someone, I'm not going to mention the person's name, but someone mentioned that, people in public really go up to their family member or a friend asking about their disability rather than going directly to the person with living experiences. That really struck me a lot because I have experiences with that as well. And so we talked about the importance of self-advocacy, how that applies to support decision making. And we also talk about the growth and opportunities, right? That people can advocate for themselves um, using their lived experiences, because that is so powerful that you can definitely share is your living experiences and the opportunity to self-advocate for yourself, to have life and control over your lives or journey. So, but definitely my group was just amazing and just very humbling to hear each one of their stories. So.
Thank you so much, Brian. Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's all about having that choice and control over your life and advocating not just in one setting, but in all settings for yourself and for your supported decision-making process. If there's no more hands raised, I can go ahead and share my screen and just talk about some post-training items. Okay. So just some items. We'll have a post-training evaluation for your homework. Again, this training is a part of a grant that DVU got with State Council of Developmental Disabilities. And a part of our training is to learn more about how our training impacted you. I think just hearing from people last week and this week is learning that they have been using supported decision making this whole time. And so we just want to kind of gauge how impactful our trainings have been, as well as learn how we can improve. And so we'll have that post-training evaluation on our Google Classroom. Other items that we'll have is your chance to submit your supported decision-making story. Here at DVU, we're working on creating a website all on supported decision-making. And a part of that is we want to be able to highlight your stories. And so if you would like to be able to be shared on our website and our story, be sure to fill that out so that we can help you do edits on your story and then have that shared out on our website for other people to see some other practical examples of supported decision making. If you attended both of our trainings, Michaela will be sending out training certificates. Again, we go through Zoom to check our attendance. And so just give us some time. They will come though. It will just take us a minute to get those all sorted out. And I know some people mentioned they were unable to attend the last session, or I know some people weren't able to attend this session. Next week, we'll be hosting an optional session. So, but we do encourage you come if you want to share more about supported decision making, talk more to moderators, be in breakout groups. We'll be recapping both of the sessions there, but ultimately it's going to be a time for us to break out into groups and practice more on co-presenting, sharing our stories, and getting involved in that process as well. And that'll be next Thursday, also at 1:30 to 3:30 as well. And with that, I think, yes, Jesse, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, so I understand that after this class, we'll be sending out e-certificates for those who attended both sessions. I mentioned earlier that I missed the first session, if I attend the optional, would I be after that section? Would I then be able to obtain the certificate, or is that
Yeah,
or
after that after the
I'm sorry, could you repeat what he said? It's sorry, Jesse, it's hard to hear you. You're a little muffled.
Yeah, no worries. So I think Jesse was asking if you missed the last session, but you attend this optional session next week, are you still able to get the certificate? Right, Jesse, is that?
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
thank you.
So, no problem. If you are able to attend this next session, you will be able to still get your certificate.
Okay, great. Thank you.
No problem. And I see Jennifer asked in the chat, if we would like to be a speaker with DBU, are there additional steps that we should take? So now we have all of, after we've completed this training, we have a list of everyone who's been involved in our supported decision-making trainings. And now you're part of this pool that we will reach out to when we need supported self-advocates to be co-presenters on our supported decision-making trainings. I would say next steps is we really encourage you to submit your supported decision-making story, which again will be posted, a form for that will be posted on the Google Classroom. I think that will help us get a gauge of what your story is and how you want to present on that topic as well. And I believe, Jennifer, you're already in our speakers bureau, correct? I think if you haven't done that already, I think Michaela can share steps on that. If you have completed our self-advocate speakers training but aren't officially in the bureau yet, there are extra steps there. But I believe, Jennifer, you are in there.
Yeah, Jennifer is.
Me too. I'm in the speakers bureau too, right?
Yes, sir.
You
Yes,
are
sir.
German. Yep.
Thank you.
I might be too, but would you be able to send me the information again? Because I also have to create my profile.
Yeah, definitely. I can send it to you, Jesse.
Thank you.
And other things is you can also update your self-advocate speakers bureau profile if you are already on there to include as one of the topics that you want to present on as supported decision making. I think everyone was able to, if you're in the self-advocate speakers bureau, be able to choose an area of expertise that you are presenting on, and supported decision making and alternatives conservatorship is one. So that's also a great opportunity to be able to update that so others know as well.
So any of the things about like the Speakers Bureau, I'll send out when I send the email after this course with some additional steps so you don't forget, because Vivian was explaining them right now. And if you want to make changes to your profile, even just including SDM, I'll just include that as an option on the email, because unfortunately you can't go in and edit it yourself. I'll have to change it for you. So I'll just confirm that you want me to do that, okay?
Thank you, Michaela. And then Michaela also put a link in the chat for the survey as well. We'll also include it on the Google Classroom, though technically this is our last session. We do have the session next week. So just be on the lookout for the Google Classroom. That'll continue to remain a resource for you all. So we'll be sure to watch the videos that we have posted in there as well. And that is also where we're going to be posting this survey link as well as the Google form to share your story as well, just so that it's more permanent there, as well as through the emails that Michaela shared as well. Amy says, awesome. All right. If there are no other questions, we'll go ahead and end our session for today. But I just wanted to thank everyone for being here and being with us and taking time out of your day to learn more about supported decision making and taking the next step in self-advocacy and wanting to become a self-advocate trainer with us here at DVU. So thank you, everyone. And we'll remain on just a little bit if people do have questions. But again, you can always reach us via the Google Classroom or by email as well. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. They're dropping off. Julie and Dalton, I think you're all set. Thank you so much for just making sure nobody has questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a quick question.
Oh,
It's
one of you
regarding
still
the
here?
email.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I have a quick question regarding the email. For the DBU, I got an email for welcome to the Google class.
I saw your note,
My
Gary.
G-Force.
Yep, I saw your note. So I can change
Okay, you saw my email?
anything,
Okay, thank you.
anything we send
So
to
will you be
you.
able to rectify that?
Yeah, anything we send to you, I will send to that email address now. To change your Google Classroom, you'll just need to join the Google Classroom with the right email. So I'll send you that link, okay?
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. And thank you so much, Keisha, for presenting today.
I do have one question.
Yeah.
So is this like the certificate? Like I would get a certificate once I did this, like the speaker training that I did. Is that how I'm understanding this whole process?
Yeah, you'll get a different certificate that shows that you are certified in speaking on supported decision making. Just give us some time. It might not happen for the next week or so, just because we want to give people an opportunity who maybe missed a session and they're going to this optional section next week, and we just want to be able to send it all out at once. But you'll get it before the end of February, definitely.
Okay, so yes, I did miss the first training because I was a goofball, but plus I was sick too.
No.
I was down and I misread Michaela's email when she sent it out about this training. I thought today was the first session and I read that completely wrong.
That's okay. Are you available next week, Carly?
I am.
Okay, cool. So then we'll definitely be able to get it after next week.
Okay. Is that gonna be in the email going out? Because I know that wasn't in the initial. Okay.
Yes.
That's fine. Have you received a request for shared decision making in terms of doing speaking and presentation?
Yeah, sorry, Gary. I think I understand what you're asking. So if we have requests for speakers for presentations already, is that what you're
Yeah, for
asking?
presentation for the shared decision making.
Yeah. Do you want to answer, Vivian?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so as of right now,
Who
we
would
don't.
that be in terms of who's speaking?
So, oh, sorry.
Who's doing the presentations?
Who's doing the presentation?
What decision are you speaking for? What shared decision making are you speaking for? Like, what are the options? What organization, I mean.
Yeah, so it'll be different organizations that reach out to us. I think some examples in the past are different SELPA, so special education planning areas have reached out to us. Other trainings can include ones that DVU hosts by ourselves, like via Zoom here. Other ones include attending different conferences from different organizations and presenting on supported decision making there. We haven't fully gotten all of the requests yet, so we're still working on getting requests, and they'll kind of happen all throughout the year. But I don't know if there's not like a specific organization yet. We're still working on getting all those details out.
All right, thank you. I would love to do speaking to us, so just let me know if there's any openings available. Just send me an email.
Perfect. And Gary, one of the other things we asked when you signed up was for your zip code, because we'll also go based on like who's closest. So if we get requests in your area, we'll definitely let you know.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Gary. Does anyone else have any other questions before we end the session for today? Okay. Well, thank you so much for staying on, everyone. Again, feel free to email us if you have any other questions. Thank you, Keisha. Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Dalton.
My